Hey everybody. This is like my 8,000th time making this video. We're gonna hope that it goes right this time. You will know if it went right this time if you're watching this. So, let's go. Earlier this week, I was teaching a lesson and a guy asked me a question. He said, "Why is God invisible?" And I don't think that's a bad question. I don't think he's doubting God or anything like that. I think it's only natural that the more we learn about God, the more questions we have. God, why do you do things this way? Why do you do things the way you do? It can almost be a prideful thing on our parts. We almost think, God, wouldn't it just make sense if you would just take a body like Jesus did and, walk among us? Or, that 1,000-year reign that's talked about in Revelation, why don't you just do that now so that everyone could just see you? I think I'd have a lot easier time, getting people to believe in God if I could say he's right over there. So, why? Well, I could make an hour-long video talking about the fact that sin separates us from God. God can't even look on sin. And so he's in heaven and we're on earth here for a short time. But those of us who believe in God, love him, and have a relationship with him, you see, we'll get to see him in all of his glory someday because of Jesus Christ and his sacrifice and his miracle and his love. You see, Jesus died for us on the cross, and then he rose again, and through the shedding of his blood, we can accept his love, we can build a relationship with him and with God, and we can spend eternity with him someday. But for now, until then, just as that guy said, God is invisible to us. Now, what's crazy is that, I can't see God with my physical eyes, and I don't hear his voice with my ears. God is everywhere. The Bible makes it very clear from the jump in Genesis that he is omnipresent. He's everywhere. It's wild to think that, and I've had some people actually creeped out by this fact before. You've never had a single moment of privacy ever because God was there. God saw all of it. God heard all of it. God knows about all of it. God is in the chair right next to me while I'm making this video. You watching at home, God is sitting across from you at the table. He's, laying beside you in bed. He's everywhere you are. But for Christians, it goes even a step further than that. You see, Jesus told his disciples, it's actually better that I go away because I'm sending a great helper. I'm sending a comforter to you. And that's the Holy Spirit. It's wild for us as Christians to think that the God of the universe is a part of me. He experiences my everyday life with me. His strength and his mercy and his love. That little voice that convicts me. And God is here. He's living in me. Now imagine that. We love to aim in that truth, but then think about how scared we get. Think about how much life freaks us out. Or if somebody said, hey, go over to your neighbor's house right now and share the gospel, and something would tighten. You'd get scared. Because we doubt. Because we don't see it. What's the old phrase? Out of sight, out of mind. We forget about God and his grace and his strength, who he is, and why we have no reason to fear because of him. So, think about this. The Bible addresses this invisibility, actually. You see, in Exodus chapter 10, we see the 9th plague in Egypt. Moses is talking with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh has reached his breaking point. He isn't quite ready to let the children of Israel go yet, but he's threatened Moses' life. Look here. Exodus chapter 10, verse 27 says, "But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he was unwilling to let them go. And Pharaoh said to him, 'Leave me, and make sure you never see my face again, for on the day that you see my face, you will die.' As you have said," Moses replied, "I will never see your face again." And he just walks off. And he just turns his back on Pharaoh and leaves. I don't know how many people understand how impressive that feat is. It's like, what? He didn't perform any kind of, godly feat right there. Oh, but he did. We don't have a good comparison for how terrifying Pharaoh would have been in this day and time. Nations cowered at the mention of Pharaoh's name. He was terrifying. He was evil. He was wicked. And he was powerful. Powerful. Moses is a murderous shepherd who sought redemption from God, and he's just his mouthpiece, and he has a stutter. Like, he's nobody. But he, of all people in the world, is able to stand before Pharaoh, be threatened by the man who can have him killed with a snap of his fingers, and Moses just lets his threats roll off his back, turns around, and just walks away from Pharaoh going, "Yeah, you're right. You're never going to see me again." How does he do that? This is such a cool verse. This is such a cool verse. Hebrews chapter 11. Look in Hebrews chapter 11. In verse 27, it says, "By faith, he left Egypt behind, not being afraid of the king's anger. For Moses persevered as one who sees him who is invisible." Moses wasn't afraid of Pharaoh because he had no reason to be afraid of Pharaoh. Pharaoh looks at Moses and he just sees nobody to him. Pharaoh believed himself a god, and Moses was this ant who had just brought all of this horrible turmoil upon him and his nation. But when Moses looked at Pharaoh, he saw something even lesser than that. There wasn't a single thing Pharaoh could have done in that moment that could have shaken Moses. If he had pointed 1,000,000,000 spears at him, I believe Moses would have been as calm and collected as possible. Because it says that he saw God. It says that Moses persevered as one who sees him who is invisible. That means that he lived his life and he carried himself as somebody who hypothetically saw God as real as me and you are in the flesh. That's how real God was to Moses. God wasn't just an idea to Moses. He believed in him so strongly. Christians, Moses didn't have the Holy Spirit like we have. Yikes. I don't know that I have that kind of faith. That gives me some... I'm not trying to put Moses on a pedestal. I'm not trying to worship him. But that gives me something to work towards in my own life. How can I be that? I think that's why he's mentioned in Hebrews. Why the author of Hebrews brings that back up thousands of years after this happened. He brings that back up to say, think of the kind of faith. Imagine if you lived your life like God was as real as me and you. How brave would you be? What if Jesus Christ knocked on your door and said, "Hey, Can me and you go witness to your neighbor? You'd say, of course, Jesus. I don't even need to grab my coat. Let's go. You'd be that brave because Jesus Christ is right there. Oh man, God is right here. Moses could stand before the most powerful, evil, wicked, terrifying man in the world and say, your threat means nothing to me because the God of the universe is in my corner. I pray that you and I gain that confidence. And if you don't believe in that God today, go read the book of John. Go read the book of Matthew. Look up a video about it summarizing it. Or just listen to this. Jesus Christ knew that without a sacrifice, we would never get to spend eternity with God. And he loved us so much that he offered himself as that perfect final sacrifice so that one day, for those of us who love him, truly love him, not just know about him, those of us who love him, God won't be invisible to us anymore. I'll get to fall down at his feet. And thanks to the perfect body and new mind that he's going to give me, I'll get to comprehend him. I'll get to see him. I believe that I will be held by God someday because he's my Father. But until that day, God may be invisible. But me and you are called to have faith, just like Moses, and to walk through this life believing in one who is invisible. Thank you. I'm praying for you. Have a great night, great day, whatever time you're watching this video.